Hello and welcome back to the Eyes Up Life podcast with your host, Ben Granis. I am excited that you're back and listening. I have an awesome episode for you today featuring Amanda Batty, who is a former professional mountain bike racer specializing in the downhill discipline. The Eyes Up Life podcast was formed after I completed a 7,000-mile bike ride around the United States to raise awareness for distracted driving and digital wellness. I wrapped that up in September of 2022, and shortly thereafter, I started out on a 6,000-mile road trip to interview 21 athletes and affiliates of Maxxis Tires. Great tire company. Check them out, maxxistires.com. These people that I interviewed are all professionals in their field, ranging from off-road racing to mountain biking to photography to media folks. So really cool people. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, and please make sure to check out afterwards we're now at episode 5, the 4 previous episodes. And stay tuned for a great episode here with Amanda Batty. So a little backstory here. Amanda wasn't actually on my original list of folks that I was interviewing, but when I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a friend that I was staying with suggested that I stop on over at the local bike shop, which is a co-op called the Bike Coop, because the owner there is really awesome. So I went in with camera in hand and asked if I might be able to interview the owner, who I happened to be talking to right when I walked in. And she, being Amanda, was a little bit hesitant at first, which she references in our conversation. But it ended up being that she is a former Maxxis athlete. So it worked out really well. What I was going into thinking was just going to be a conversation with a fellow lover of bikes and cool person ended up being those things plus a Maxxis athlete. So fit in really well with the project and was a great conversation. So I think you'll really enjoy this one. Not much more to say, but you'll hear sounds of her lovely dog who was at her feet the whole time. So don't get distracted by that, but enjoy the chat, and we'll talk a little bit at the end. Enjoy. Bye-bye. All right. So if you could start, Amanda, just by introducing yourself, your name, and where you're from.
So I am Amanda Batty, and I'm here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Yeah.
Did you grow up here, or?
No, I moved here 6 years ago from Salt Lake City, Utah.
And where are we? What is this shop?
So this is the bike shop. This is the Bike Coop, and then we're currently sitting in the Bike Co-op, which is in the back of the bike shop. So it's kind of a business mullet.
And what's your role here?
I am the owner.
How did that come to be?
I got involved here about 3 years ago, and then a couple of years ago during the pandemic, the other owner decided to retire, and I bought the shop, and yeah.
How long have bikes been part of your life, and how did that happen?
Pretty much my whole life, since I was a little kid. You know, took a break from it as a young teenager, came back to it in my late teens, and then started racing and everything else.
What did you race? What was your career like?
I was a former professional downhill racer.
Can you tell folks who maybe don't know what downhill is, what that sport's like?
It's essentially like if you combine skiing and motocross, but then you took away the engines and the skin suits, full face helmets. That's kind of what downhill is.
How'd you get into that sport?
I was a snowboarder, and then I started skiing, and I was coaching, and I needed a summer sport, and going uphill wasn't appealing, and so I wanted to go fast, so downhill it was.
How did your career go? Success?
Yeah, pretty well. I raced professionally for 10 years, and then in 2018, I retired after a A pretty bad lower leg injury.
What happened? How did you get through it?
I crashed the morning of finals at U.S. Nationals in Snowshoe, Virginia, and I destroyed my right leg by overshooting a jump.
And did that kind of mark the end of your professional career, or did you get back on it?
It's funny. I returned to racing last year just kind of for fun, and to kind of prove a point. And I think I did really, really well for someone who's coming off the couch who owns a bike shop. But in the meantime, I kind of discovered that racing isn't where my passion is anymore. I just want to give bikes away and like do cool stuff with bikes. So get more people on bikes and make the bike industry more inclusive, and more accessible. So that's hence the bike coop.
What keeps you? Cause I imagine owning a bike shop and co-op is a lot of work. What keeps you motivated in the harder times?
Spite? No. It's so when I was racing, I had a lot of opinions. I was really outspoken about the ways that I thought the bike industry could be better. And it's part of the reason why I bought a bike shop, is because it was then an opportunity to walk the walk instead of just, saying criticisms, and to prove that it could actually be done, to prove that the things that I had been talking about for, almost 15 years could actually be incorporated into the bike industry, that we could build community and create a more inclusive space that was accessible to people who weren't just able-bodied white dudes. No offense. But thus far, it's been interesting with COVID because everybody kind of had to adapt. But that's the whole point. That's why I loved downhill, is because the forced adaptation to different tracks, different weather conditions, different challenges and injuries it's one of the things that I loved. And so owning a bike shop and running a bike co-op is kind of the same thing from day to day. It doesn't really ever get boring. It gets exhausting, but not boring.
How big of a staff do you have for your helping out?
There are currently 3 of us.
Wow, so that's not not a whole lot of support. So does a lot of it fall on you then, the day to day?
Yeah, the day to day, we have a couple of part-time staff members, and then we have my boyfriend who pretty much works for free, and some drop in. We have just some folks who drop in from time to time and help out, and that's really nice. But as far as like full-time staff, we have 3 people, and it is stressful, but we have a really amazing team here. And even though my name's on the door kind of a thing, it's those guys make it so that I can actually get paperwork done and do ordering and receiving. And there's no way that no man's an island, and there's no way that any of this would be possible, or any of this would have been possible this year without my team. So Andrew and Simon have been absolutely fantastic.
What was your dream job growing up? Or career?
I didn't really have a dream job. I wanted to be multiple things. I wanted to be an astronaut and a brain surgeon, and I want to be a lot of things. And so over the course of my life, my adult career, I've been lucky enough to do a little bit of everything, and that's been fun.
So I'm here driving through to interview folks about distracted driving. So you mentioned when I came in that you recently had an incident with a distracted driver. Can you tell me about that experience and your experience generally with distracted driving?
So recently, well, it depends on how recent. So 2 years ago, so November 9th, 2020, we were sideswiped driving up the canyon on I-40 here in my truck, and we hit the center median and almost flipped. We were going 75 or 80 miles an hour. And if you've ever seen a Hot Wheels car, when its axles breaks, a distracted driver, and unfortunately that driver drove off, and they didn't catch him, but there were a couple of witnesses to that crash, and one of them was a professional race car driver. So his testimony helped the insurance company take care of us, but the damage was pretty extensive.
Did you know for a fact that they were distracted? How did you know?
Because I was in the passenger seat during that crash, I saw and it was a tiny two-door BMW, and it had just started drifting into our lane, and he was just looking at his phone. And I was just like, he's gonna stop, and then I was like, holy, and I yelled, and my boyfriend realized how close he was, and he clipped his mirror on the edge of the car, and it was. I couldn't believe how fast it came, and if Mark hadn't swerved, we would have killed that guy. We would have absolutely just, because it's a Chevy Tahoe on a truck frame. It's a tank. Luckily for us, it makes it safe, but it's also, there's a much larger responsibility when it comes to responsible driving or careful driving, and I pride myself on being a good driver. And the other night, on Saturday night, less than 2 years after getting my truck back, the first crash it took about 6 months to repair the truck, because it broke both axles and all of that, and then so I got it back in May of 2021, and then Saturday night, my boyfriend was driving again. This Saturday, like 4 days ago. My boyfriend was driving, and apparently he has the worst luck ever. But a driver ran a stop sign and totaled the front of my truck, and his own car. He had like a two-door Toyota something, and his car was absolutely done. But.
And was that driver also distracted, or just didn't pay attention to the stop sign?
He didn't even slow down. So there are skid marks on the road where my boyfriend saw him coming and hit the brakes and kind of swerved, and that the driver of the other car didn't even slow down for the stop sign. So I don't know if he was distracted. He wasn't under the influence of anything, and it just was, yeah.
What have these experiences, and maybe you have additional experiences as a cyclist with distracted drivers, but what has your experience done to influence your approach to driving and your use of your phone in your car?
So I've had a couple of friends and then loved ones of close friends who have been hit and killed by distracted drivers. And then I've been hit by a car 3 times while on a bike, and then more than once, almost, everybody's had a close call. If you ride at all on the street or around around where cars drive, it's not an if, and I wish it were, but it's a when. And so it tends to be something that, as a cyclist, I've seen enough of my friends hurt or killed, and had enough, and have had bikes destroyed, and have had enough close calls where when I'm in the car, my phone gets put on silent. Apple has driving mode. My phone gets put on silent. It goes face down in the center console, and when I stop, I'll pick it up. But other than that, the risks are too high. Like the stakes are too high. These are people's lives, and it's, and I see bikes come in here all the time of people. We had a friend who has a giant zipper scar from his collarbone to his pelvis, who was run down by a car last year who didn't like the fact that he took a left-hand turn through a stop sign without signaling with his hands, and so the car followed him and ran him down. He ended up at UNM, and his buddies brought his bike in, and he came and visited us months later when he got out of the hospital, and it was something that we see here all the time, bent forks and damaged frames, but we unfortunately get to see the mechanical side of that, but then you see the physical side, and you see what it does to humans, and what a car, or even another, what a motorcycle can do to a cyclist. It's really sobering, and you have to pay attention. You start paying attention. If I don't know, I think that if you see all of that, if you could see all of that and then you don't pay attention, you might be a psychopath. But
well, so I think there's so many people in this country who they're so far removed from the risk because they don't have any experience anywhere near or anywhere near as much experience as you do, or any cyclist who's on the road. And a lot of people just think they're invincible and it'll never happen, so they just continue to use their phone. What would you say to the average American who is a victim to using their phone, the distractions that they get while they're driving, and continue to make that a risk for other users of the road?
Quite frankly, you have a responsibility. I think that a lot of people in the U.S. in particular, I think that a lot of people go on autopilot when they get into their cars. They don't know how to be alone. They don't know how to not constantly be entertained. And driving can be boring, but it's supposed to be. You're operating a multi-thousand-pound motorized piece of metal. Like, it should be boring. It's not. Humans don't have an entitlement to entertainment. We don't deserve this constant stimuli. And I think that there is a pretty serious cultural misconception about how we need to be entertained and stimulated all the time. And that leads to a lot of the squirrel behavior inside of a car. When we're waiting at a stoplight, we pick up our phone. When you're driving down the freeway, you're like, there's nobody around, but you're still a risk. Like, there might not be anybody around you in that lane at that time, but there's still, oncoming traffic. There's still you in that vehicle, and people have a responsibility to be careful, to pay attention. And I think that we don't, as a country, we also don't enforce traffic laws as much as we should. I mean, I could go on and on about it, but especially here in Albuquerque, people are terrible drivers, and we're one of the deadliest places for cyclists and pedestrians. And it's why we're like the shop. As a shop owner, it kind of gives me the ability to take a more aggressive but appropriate approach, because I'm allowed to be an outspoken advocate. And so it's definitely enabled me to kind of push on the powers that be and say, hey, I see all of these damaged bikes. I see all these damaged bodies. Like, what are you doing to fix this? We talk to pedestrians who walk by. And the common denominator is drivers. It's drivers and cars. And it's not just, they call it a car accident instead of a human-caused car crash. And just kind of the way that we talk about cars and distracted driving and the people who are responsible for the harm of others, I don't think that there's nearly enough accountability for that.
What do you think's a big step that we could take as a country to move us in the right direction?
See, and a big step. I think that lowering speed limits is a huge step, and then actually enforcing those lowered speed limits. I think that going back to one-lane carways where cars are required to pay attention, I think roundabouts are an excellent solution, because research has shown that roundabouts are so effective because they're not stop signs, and drivers generally slow way down because they know that there's a possibility of other oncoming traffic that's not required to stop, and so it equalizes the playing field. And I've seen it happen, just up the street here with cyclists and cars. Yeah, I think that infrastructure and more crosswalks, more pedestrian and bicyclist right-of-ways that give non-motorized traffic the legal upper hand. I think that drivers are far more careful when crosswalks are enforced. I think that when traffic laws are enforced, drivers suddenly become far more careful. I mean, that's why the industry of radar detectors is so healthy.
Just to wrap things up, talk to me about your relationship to social media and how you have a balance with it, if you do have a balance in your life.
I have learned it's a lot like alcohol. Social media is a really strange phenomenon. Different times of my life and career, especially because I was an early social media adopter, much like a lot of the elder millennials, I think, between MySpace, early Facebook, and then Instagram and Twitter and everything else. I think that moderation is key, and it's funny now because I don't have enough time for social media, even to promote the business and stuff that we're doing. Moderation is definitely key, but so is perspective, like a lot of perspective. What's real, what isn't, who's paying someone to say certain things, and it's social media. It has to be healthy, and there has to be a balance, and there has to be perspective, or else it will drive people crazy. I think that's why a lot of people, I mean, it's showing, research is showing that there are a ton of people who are experiencing more psychological distress than ever before, when we have the least amount of psychological stressors. And I think that the constant, 24/7, oh, everybody's watching you, or the perception that everybody's watching you is really damaging. I think that social media is an interesting one for me because it can provide a truly impactful platform. It can give people the ability to make so much change, but it can also greatly harm. It can do immense amount of harm, and I wish I had known that earlier in my career. I wish that I had taken that into consideration because I was kind of an asshole. I think, which is why when you walked in, I was like, it depends on who's asking, because I constantly joke about I never know when I'm going to get punched in the face by someone who I might have been not as kind as I should have been. So it's definitely an even mixture, and it's got to stay healthy like anything else.
Can we just wrap up by having you promise to drive distraction free?
Absolutely. That's been made more clear to me as of late than ever before. So I can openly commit, and I would encourage everybody else to, not driving distracted. I pledge to put my phone down when I'm behind the wheel and not drive distracted.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Amanda. Hope you enjoyed it. She offers a really interesting and unique take on distracted driving and digital wellness, and I think was one of the coolest people to talk to, and pretty awesome that she was not on my original list. So one of those things that just worked out. Further proof that when you're doing something that you love and believe in, doors will open and the path will unfold as it's supposed to. So just trust in the process and enjoy it for all that it's worth, no matter the challenges and obstacles that lie in the way. So until next time, which will be in 2 weeks with Steve Matthes, who is our first media person. He is another interesting fella. So that'll be a good one. Until then, remember to drive distraction free. Please, if you don't know how to enable driving focus on your phone so that you don't get any of those pesky notifications that tempt you to take your eyes off the road, head on over to eyesupride.com/resources to read more about all that good stuff. It's not worth it. Nothing is so important, and you'll be saving not only potentially your own life, but the lives of others. And stay tuned for more updates. Subscribe to the newsletter, eyesupride.com. And I appreciate your time for listening to this, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.